Right, so what's going on, Jem?
So we've been joined today by Andrew Kuh, Head of International Spaceflight Policy from the UK Space Agency. And we're going to be playing Mars Horizon and talking all things space, because Andrew does real life Mars Horizon.
Real life Nice Horizon, yeah. That's what it's
IRL.
on TV.
Right, okay, well, guys, you just joined us. I'm just about to launch our first sounding rocket of our space agency. I'm playing as ESA today. So, yeah, it is currently somewhere in the mid 50s, and we're about to launch our first sounding rocket. So, let's see how this goes. What even is a sounding rocket?
Landing rocket. So it's kind of a generic term that we use for vehicles that don't go into orbit. So you'll often hear them called suborbital rockets or suborbital launch vehicles. So they'll go up a very long way, and then rather than entering orbit, they'll come back down to Earth. So lots of them do go as far as space, the kind of nominal line that we call space, of 100 kilometers high. Lots of them will go quite high above that, but they won't complete an orbit of the Earth.
Okay, cool. By the way, our sounding rocket didn't explode, so that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed, I'll be honest.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. So I'm sending a sounding rocket up in the early 50s. Are they still sending sounding rockets up now?
They are. In fact, just this afternoon, I was chatting to a sounding rocket company. So they're still used for all kinds of things. Because there's more to going to space than just going into orbit. Sometimes they're used to test components which are designed for orbital spacecraft. So you just want to see how subsystems might react when they're in microgravity. And sometimes they are used not just as a route to orbit, but for their own inherent usefulness. Because when you're launching up into space, you'll get a few minutes of microgravity typically for the sounding rocket.
Right.
And that can be used to research all kinds of things, using that weightlessness, seeing how different materials respond to being in a weightless environment.
Is that
Really useful for all kinds of.
weightlessness? Is that a bit like there's a hill where I live, and if I go over it really fast in the car, my tummy gets this little.
Right, so you will. That's microgravity. It's a very cheap way. That's a very cheap way to experience microgravity for a very, very short time. You'll experience it if you're on a swing at a playground. I know I'm a bit too old to go on swings, but I do still indulge sometimes.
Yeah.
For that split second, when you're at the top of the swing, you'll be experiencing microgravity for a very short period.
Mike, sorry, just getting some feedback. Your mic's a little quiet.
Okay.
Could you turn yourself up a bit or get closer to the mic? Sorry, carry on.
So yeah, that's microgravity. And yeah, obviously, if you do a big launch, and then it's kind of the parabola at the top of your trajectory. So you'll be experiencing weightlessness for some of that time during it, and then you'll be experiencing increased G on the way up and the way down, which can also be useful for research to see how things respond to being under increased G.
Right. Okay. Well, next time I'm going too fast over the bridge near Hutton Moor Leisure Centre, I shall think I'm technically undertaking a microgravity experiment. Right. Well, listen, guys. While I've been chatting, I've decided to set up our next mission for our space agency, and we're going to try and send up an artificial satellite, specifically the ESRO-2B. So that's exciting. And on that, I'm just building a rocket. And what I'm doing is I'm using the Jupiter upper and the Jupiter booster. It's a classic shape, I'm sure you'll agree. Classic rocket shape. Wonder if anybody's got any ideas for a name for this magnificent machine we've just built?
Call it Space Worms.
Space Worm.
That's what we were talking about before we went live.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to explain that one a little bit later, I think. I'm going to save Space Worm because I've got a feeling I'm going to be using this design again. Oh, haven't got quite enough money. Okay.
What's
So
the best way to make money in Mars Horizon?
well, the best. There's a few ways to make money in Mars Horizon. So you're always getting funding from your member states if you're ESA, or from your governments if you're any of the other agencies. The best way to make money is either to do request missions that will give you like a nice big lump of cash, or kind of wait and hope that you get some money from the government. How accurate is that, Andrew? Do you have to do a lot of waiting for a big dollop of money?
I mean, I wish we could just sit on our hands and wait.
Yeah, click in a box until it appears.
A lot of the work that we do is making the case for space and for why public investment is worthwhile in space programs. So yeah, that's a fairly big part of what we do in the space agency, is demonstrating why the missions or developments we have in mind are good value for money. And just like anything else government invests in, you've got to demonstrate that it's worthwhile, because this is taxpayers' money ultimately.
Right.
So go through quite a lot of quite rigorous, I guess quite boring economic and social analyses of where we could invest money. And yeah, that's how we make those decisions. But I'm not sure how much detail you're going to in the game of that. I could feel the game a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But
we
do.
I'll show on screen in a minute. So I'm just about to place a rocket test pad, by the way, Jem. Just pop that there. So let's have a look at the old money side of things. So basically, Andrew, we've kept it pretty simple. You've got your funding, and that's it. It comes in every month. Like, we don't want to get too bogged down into that. Right. So where are we now? So we're building a research lab. We've got 4 months until the space worm is complete. 3 until the test pad is complete. Okay. Let's research.
Someone asking about the weather in the game. It said, "Is it terrible all the time for ESA?"
Well, so ESA's launch site isn't in Europe, so it stands.
Well, it's legally in Europe. It's in
okay.
Guyana, which is an overseas department of France. So politically, it's part of Europe, but much more dependable weather than you might get over here.
So we can have a look at it's called Europe Spaceport. How long did they think of? How long were they coming up with that name? Yeah. So in Guyana. So that's in kind of like on the right-hand side of South America. Or was that Guyana? I get the two mixed up.
There's French Guyana, which is along from Guyana. It's on the north coast of South America, basically.
Right. Okay. And so it's like more of an equatorial location, is it? Kind of thing. And that's handy, is it, for space? Yeah,
it depends on the kind of trajectory you need and what kind of orbit you're going for. So for a lot of space missions, it is helpful to be near the equator. I mean, we're looking at establishing launch from the UK, because the UK could be useful if you're going into a polar orbit. So that's where you're going, passing over the poles, or the sun synchronous orbit, which is a similar inclination. For other types of missions, it is helpful to be near the equator. It's why you see a lot of spaceports around that area.
So have we actually got any spaceports in the UK?
So that's what I'm spending a lot of my time at the moment working on. We've got a program to establish commercial spaceports in the UK. And the idea of these is that they're not big institutional government-run sites. They will be commercially owned and operated. We as the government are mainly there to regulate them, make sure everything's done safely. It's quite a big job, but we won't be running the sites. So there's a few in the running, mostly in the north coast of Scotland or down the west coast of the UK, so in Cornwall and Llanbedr in West Wales as well. So there's a few prospective sites. We're not going to pick which one eventually does become a spaceport. They all could do.
It's very cool. Do you know what I mean, Jem? The idea of having a spaceport around the corner is
Yeah, get one in Bristol. It'd be very convenient for us.
I mean, could do. I'm not sure it passed the safety requirements. There's quite a few people in Bristol.
Yeah, I guess. All
So it has
right.
to be a certain distance from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend on the operations. There's some launches you can do which basically use a traditional aircraft. So Virgin Orbit will use a Boeing 747 basically, fly out across the ocean and then launch the rocket once they're out over the ocean,
Oh, wow.
from under the wing of the aircraft. So that's what's being developed down in Cornwall at the moment.
Well, to segue into launches, we are.
We're getting. I've had a message that the stream seems to be down. Does it seem okay your end, Mike?
I'm not getting any problems this end.
Okay. Wonder if it's the. I think it's just a bit laggy. I'm not sure if that's Steam or us.
Okay. Well, see.
We'll carry on, but I'll look into it.
Okay, so this is our launch of an artificial satellite mission. I don't know if you can see the stats, Andrew, on the launch pad, but I'm going to fill you in. We've got an overall reliability of 78%. We've lost 2% because the conditions are kind of a little bit iffy. Obviously, nothing is ever 100% in space stuff. I reckon we should go for it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, always.
Yeah? All right.
Always yes.
The game player in me says yes. The bureaucrat in me with the public responsibility says no way.
Heavens no. It's all right. There's no people on it. It's just an artificial satellite. Oh, how much? So how much? If this did go wrong, we could be blowing up millions. If it's
Yeah, I mean it varies. It depends. It depends a lot on what you're launching. But yeah, potentially hundreds of millions of pounds worth of equipment. I wouldn't have thought so for Ezro 2B. And if there is a failure, then a lot of the money you've spent will have been in the design of that first satellite. So to then rebuild it won't cost the same amount again.
Cool. Okay, gang, let's go. We have just successfully sent up the artificial satellite. So we've got to do a little mission now. So I'll do this mission, this artificial satellite mission. I don't know if you can see this bit of the game, Andrew. I don't think you've seen this bit before.
No.
So when you actually go on missions, what we're doing is we've got modules and we've got power. So each payload has got a certain amount of power, and then we've got these modules that convert the power into other things. So like there's a module that converts power to comms, one that converts it to like navigation, and one that converts it to data. And each mission has basically its own requirement of collect X amount of this and X amount of that. So without seeing what I'm doing, not a huge amount of help you can be at this point in our space agency. But don't worry, I got this, guys.
We've actually had a question for Andrew in the chat.
Oh,
Someone's asked, what support, if any, does the UK Space Agency offer through ESA to the Lunar Gateway programme?
That's a good question. So that's something we are assessing at the moment. We do expect there to be UK involvement in that. And yeah, that will be via the European Space Agency. So a big chunk of our work in the UK Space Agency is delivered in partnership with ESA. So I can't tell you exactly what we'll be involved in, but yeah, there are plans for UK companies and researchers to be involved in the Lunar Gateway. But yeah, that'll be via ESA. That'll be the kind of key partner for that.
Cool. Do you want to explain what the Lunar Gateway programme is for people who aren't as in the know?
Good point. Yeah, so as I guess most people are aware, we've not sent humans to the moon in a while. And so one of the concepts which is being worked up at the moment is building a space station in cislunar space. So that means near the moon. So that'll be a space station not entirely different to the International Space Station, which is orbiting Earth at the moment, but probably a fair bit smaller. And so there's different conditions once you're that close to the moon. Eventually it could be used for sortie missions, from the space station down to the lunar surface. So yeah, that's something that's being developed at the moment by a broad coalition of countries from around the world.
So it'd be easier to get from that space station to the moon than just going straight there.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Hence the term gateway, I guess. We like using metaphors in naming our missions.
In another amazingly elegant segue, guys, I am just planning the lunar orbit mission.
Perfect.
So the payload I'm going to choose for this is the Pioneer, which is a small probe carrying scientific instruments and radio transmitted. It's protected by a painted fiberglass shell. Wonder how much that paint weighs. Well,
we were talking about this in our Discord the other day. The weight of paint.
Yeah, the weight of paint on rockets and payloads.
I hadn't even considered this, but yeah, like it's very expensive to send stuff up there.
Yeah. So we've
it's not something I've given a great deal of thought to, but it is something absolutely every gram counts when you're designing a spacecraft. So that's definitely something that will be taken into account.
Of course, right. Okay, so what are we doing now? I think it's time for me to build a mission control as well. At the moment, like, you start the game with one mission slot, so you can like do one mission at a time. But by putting down a mission control, you can have more than one mission going on at once. You can expand that as well later on, so you can have multiple missions. But let's do that. Oh, hello. We've had a power cut now. When a few months ago, a couple of us went down to ESA, and one thing they were particularly pleased to tell us about was a battery backup generator. It sounds like something that nobody would think about, but how important is a battery backup generator? Because apparently it's so important, we felt compelled to put one in our game.
For the spacecraft?
For the whole base, for the mission control base. Kind of right, yeah.
Yes, I mean, for all systems and subsystems, you'll have redundancies built in, because you never know what's going to go wrong. And yeah, nothing ever goes entirely as you expect. So yeah, you'll always build in redundancies, especially for something as critical as power supply.
Okay, right. Well, I just got into a lot of trouble because I did not have a backup power generator, and I had a power cut. So I'm just gonna research one of them, and I know somewhere Emmett is going. That's a very good idea. Right. Any reports on the stream? How it going so far? Jem, any?
It's lagging a bit again. We will keep seeing if there's anything we can do to fix that. Might have to drop out and come back in again if it causes big issues.
Okay.
Someone has also asked, was there any involvement by the UK Space Agency in terms of the ESM for Orion?
Not directly, no. So that's the European Service Module. So Orion is the new US-led crewed capsule, which will be used for deeper space missions, so beyond Earth orbit. And no, there's no direct UK involvement in that, because we can't do everything. I wish we could.
Yeah.
But we have to be quite strategic about what we invest in and what we contribute to. So
yeah.
That was mostly, I think, France, Germany, and Italy were the key kind of European players in that, I think.
So, remember we were building the space worm?
Yes, the space worm.
How could we forget? So the space worm, I think, is just finished. So we're now setting some launch reliability training for this. And I'm going to set the launch date for November. Is it in Europe spaceport? Does it get cold in the winter? I can't work it out. Is it one of those places that kind of stays the same all year round, or?
Yeah, so it's tropical. So it's essentially the same. I think there's a short rainy season, but it's pretty much the same year round.
Now, we've just had an event pop up. The discovery of debris likely belonging to a weather balloon has sparked a wave of conspiracy theories surrounding UFOs. Several questionable magazines have approached your agency for comment. Shall we encourage speculation or dismiss speculation, Andrew? Where do you stand on this? A bit of healthy speculation, or shall we poo-poo the whole?
I always welcome interest in our space program. However, yeah, it does. There are a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and I think it's important not just to dismiss them out of hand. I think you have to acknowledge that people have an interest in these things, and that interest comes from somewhere. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to give credibility to some of the theories that come out. The thing is, we're a government agency. If you look at how frequently things leak from the government in general, across all countries, I'm not talking about our government, but things do leak from governments.
There were some funny videos, weren't there, a couple of months ago of some strange rotating things captured by the American military.
Right. If there's any credence in most of these theories, I think we'd have hard evidence because it would have leaked. And there's many other arguments against most of these conspiracy theories.
Let's dismiss speculation, shall we?
Good idea.
Okay.
I always encourage it because I like watching the shows on the History Channel.
So our agency has dismissed the speculation. There's more than enough wonders in our solar system, Andrew Kuh said. So we don't need to make them up. He's quite right. Excellent.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. So let's try and take this probe up to the moon. It's launch day for the space worm. It's looking like a lovely day. 80% chance of success. That's good enough for me.
I like those odds.
Well, okay, it's your space agency.
Yeah, I guess you'd demand much higher odds in real life.
Absolutely, yeah, but yeah, I guess that's why it's fun to play around with it in a game environment, right? That's not the kind of risk you take in real life.
Exactly. How's the stream looking, Jem? I've got.
Oh, it's a bit laggy still. I think it might be Steam rather than us. I think.
Okay.
It seems to be loading again. Come on, please. Just want to launch some rockets.
Well, the rocket's up. We've now got the Apollo in its first. No, not the Apollo. What's it called? What probe did we send
The
up?
space worm.
Oh no! What was the probe we sent up?
ESRO.
Oh no!
I don't know.
That was the artificial satellite. Was it the Pioneer we sent up?
Pioneer.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody's paying attention.
Too busy thinking about space worms.
Okay. Right, so for this mission I have to get 4 nav tokens and 4 comms. I've got 6 batteries, so I'm just going to plow them all into that. How big was this Pioneer probe? It looks kind of cute. Is it like a dustbin lid size? Should have checked. Jamie, pull that up.
I don't know the answer to that. You stumped me.
Pioneer probe. Launched in 1972, weighed 258 kilograms.
Because they painted it.
Yeah, that's what it was. That weighty paint. Its mission was 30 years. Oh,
it kept going for 30 years, did it?
It's a long old mission.
Yeah, it's one of the things we often find. We'll have space missions will be designed for a nominal lifetime of, say, 5 years of observation, and that's what the scientists will have said they need in order to get the results that's driving the mission. But often they're so well designed and so reliable that they'll go on for years and years after that. Which is a lovely problem to have as a space agency because you're getting all continued results and more return on your investment. And then we have to support the mission, as long as it's viable and delivering good results.
Yes, right. Bit of that.
Oh yeah, I found the size as well. 2.74 meters or 9 foot in diameter.
Oh, that's way bigger than I was expecting.
Pretty hefty, yeah. Oh, it's got a nice little mission badge. I need some more. We need to make some Mars Horizon mission badges to go on our spacesuits.
Definitely, they're one thing that really excites people in the space sector. Every mission and every possible initiative we do, there's always a mission pack. Yeah.
I was looking up because it was World Turtle Day the other day, so I was looking up the turtle theme badges, and there was an a nice turtle one to do with one of the teams was called Turtle, but there was also the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a badge, which was great. It's to do with some payloads that were named after Donatello and Michelangelo and stuff. So they've got like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle badge. I want that one for my suit. It would look awesome.
Okay, I'm just wrapping this mission up. Whew, okay. The Pioneer is now safely flapping its way around around the moon. Okay. So, what were we talking about earlier that was really interesting about how part of the UK Space Agency's remit is kind of like bringing space closer to people, so which is why stuff like Mars Horizon and your involvement in this happens.
Right, yeah, it's one of the things I've always been quite interested in doing more of. The way I see it, it's kind of the space in the popular imagination, it's what everyone thinks about when they think about space in the general public. The space as we practice it in our institutions and space agencies. There's a bit of a disconnect between the two, so something I've always been keen to do is, from the agency perspective, try and bridge that gap a little bit. And I think, yeah, Mars Horizon is a really nice example of that. How we've worked together to try and make it based on the actual facts of space exploration, which are kind of exciting enough. Obviously, it's gamified and then made into something that hopefully people will enjoy playing, which I'm sure they'll enjoy playing. But I think it's something we can always do more of from the space agency perspective. Actually, reach out. We've done things with contemporary artists and a whole variety of people to try and address that kind of.
So even like art and music and stuff, and like the whole creative fields.
Yeah, so we funded some contemporary art, which I thought was really interesting. It was an artist she's done lots of space themed work in the past, not kind of cosmic art, but responding to the actuality of space exploration. But she'd never really spoken to any space agencies. So we worked with her on something called the Space Tapestry. So it's a huge almost mural made entirely with Sharpie pens, using different themes from the history of space exploration, and really examining space exploration not as a thing in itself, but how it's socially embedded, how it's part of our society, which was really interesting for us as well, because we then get a better insight into how our work is perceived beyond the difference of the space sector itself.
That's so cool.
So what's the best space album?
Space album. There's a few. I think one of my favourite space songs is Marvin Gaye's Funky Space Reincarnation, which is from his 1978 album, Hear My Dear. That's pretty good. That's pretty cosmic.
Right.
And obviously Sun Ra, the whole Sun Ra back catalogue is inherently cosmic.
Yes.
I believe Sun Ra claimed he was born on Saturn, I think.
And who are we to question? What are we talking about, man? We were talking about Sun Ra. We were talking about... I got just while I was there fiddling with the stream, I got to thinking about Maggot Brain. It's not really the same, but... Yeah, anyway.
Maggot Brain, Funkadelic?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of cosmic imagery in Parliament Funkadelic records, of course, which I find fascinating. And I think a lot of people in the space sector love this kind of stuff, but there's not always a conversation between those two sides. That's something I'm keen to stoke more of.
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of George Clinton, but I know he would quite like to see a mothership. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure if your people was to speak to his people, then.
Yeah. I'm a huge George Clinton fan, actually. And I had the best day of my life. I was down in Florida. I'd been to Cape Canaveral, and so looking around all the facilities they got there, and it just so happened George Clinton was in town playing in Orlando that evening. So I also saw Parliament Funkadelic on the same day, and that was like all my cosmic dreams.
What a day! That's crazy. Right. So what have I been doing while we've been so chatting and messing around with the stream? I built a medium launch pad, So that's exciting. You got to have a medium launch pad, don't you? There's only so far you can get on a small. And I've also built another space worm because we're doing a little request mission. Somebody wants us to send up an artificial satellite. I mean, I guess satellites aren't just for like sending down football, is it?
There's quite a lot of uses of satellites. So, I mean, telecommunications, so enabling satellite television is a big part of it. And I mean, there's all different types of telecommunications. Also, Earth observation, so imaging the Earth, looking down from Earth from above. So, an obvious application of that for meteorology, but there's all kinds of uses for looking back at the Earth from space. Navigation, so GPS obviously relies on a network of satellites. So yeah, those are kind of three of the big reasons for sending things into space. Then also looking out into the universe as well. Once you're beyond Earth's atmosphere, you can study astronomy and the universe around us with a lot less interference.
Okay, cool. Right, well,
yeah, because I used to work at the Institute of Physics, and I worked with some of the astrophysicists, and they talked about the telescope that is up on the mountain in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the highest point you can get and helps them see over the atmosphere. And also it sounded like they get to go on loads of awesome holidays to Hawaii.
I'm always suspicious of how many astronomy conferences seem to happen in Hawaii. I'm sure there's a good justification, but
there was quite a lot. I didn't get to go on any, and they were like, you could tell on the plane it was all these people either like in holiday gear or like astrophysicists, like really excited to look at the stars. Just one or the other.
Good news, guys. Space Worm's done it again. Another successful launch.
It's the name. It's the lucky name.
Yeah. So I think we're attaching we're upgrading something. We're adding some radio capability to an existing satellite or something. All sounds very complicated.
Orbital radio. Can you tell us about the space worms now, then, Andrew? I want to know about these.
Oh yeah, space worms, right? Okay.
Space worm. Where to start? So now we have sent worms into space for research purposes, not just for lols. A few different groups have done this, but a year or two ago there was a British research group who sent a bunch of worms to the space station. And the idea of this was that a lot of the underlying biology of how these worms respond to being in a weightless environment is actually very similar to how humans respond to being in a weightless environment. So studying the changes and the effects it has on these worms can then teach us about how humans respond to being in space. But also that research is relevant on the ground for all manner of diseases that affect the muscles, particularly for people who are less mobile, and so are using their muscles less. It's actually a really good analog for studying some of those conditions. So it gives us an insight into how humans can respond. So it's actually C. elegans worms. So they're the tiny worms that you can study under a microscope. So you can get quite a few up there, quite a lot of bang for your buck. And
you said they had several generations up there.
Yeah, so previous experiments, they've grown a few generations, and actually they've seen changes from generation to generation of how these worms live.
Amazing, mutant space worms.
That would be the eye-catching headline for sure.
I'd read that because we don't need aliens. We already have mutant space worms. Perfect. I'll guess the funding.
Okay, so where are we at now? So I've built a couple of buildings that I haven't got around to placing yet, guys. I've got a research lab, and apparently this is going to really greatly improve the scientific yields from missions. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. What's the other one? The other one I've got but I haven't built is the spacecraft assembly facility, which provides a clean room environment to aid the development of complex mission payloads. Let's go for the research lab to start with, I reckon. Just
get up for that.
Just to get a nice steady flow of science coming in. Let's clear a bit of clear a bit of that and see if there's room for it. Yeah.
This is one of the things we've updated, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Oh, here we go. Do you remember just then we sent the space worm up to do some radio signals? Well, apparently some children on the opposite side of the world have managed to pick up the radio signals as part of a school project, and it's been widely covered by the press. So this sort of thing is exactly what you do, kind of thing, Andrew. In that it's kind of like so in here, some school kids have picked up our radio signal, and the press have sort of picked up on it, and we're going to turn it into a nice thing, because I'm going to send them some mission memorabilia. So I'm going to send them some mission patches. What do you reckon? They'll like that.
Yeah, send them the space worm patch.
Yeah, man, space worm mission patch. Can you imagine that?
I'm going to look it up.
There are they exist. They're out there. For the molecular muscle experiment, it was called. And I think the mission patch was basically a worm in a spacesuit.
Oh my god, that's so good. Like space, what's this, Earthworm Jim?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Oh look, there he is. I mean, it's great.
Okay, so couple of things. We've just reached era 2. So that's good. We've got satellites encircling the Earth. The world is increasingly captivated by the idea of space exploration. And we've unlocked the inner planets. So what have we got now? Who's this cheeky chappy? It's Venus, Mercury, and going over this way. Well, looky here. Who's that fella? The eponymous Mars.
Fan of the moment.
Yeah. What are we doing? So what we got? So we've got a request mission going on. I think I've just set up a mission for taking some photographs on the far side of the moon. That sounds fun. So yeah, so let's oh, and that was the other thing. So I've just unlocked contractors. So obviously before that, our little space agency in the game, we were making everything ourselves. Very, very time consuming, but now we've unlocked the concept of contractors. This means that basically we can get other fellas to make stuff for us. I guess like ESA and the UK Space Agency, you'll be using contractors.
Yeah, right. So particularly in the UK, we are a relatively small space agency. A lot of the work of actually designing spacecraft and cutting the metal, is done by space companies. So we've got quite a healthy space industry in the UK, and yes, we contract them to deliver our requirements. As government, we set policy and direction and provide funding. But we would be nowhere if it was just me trying to build. That would be
just in the shed.
So yeah, the involvement of contractors is crucial, and ever more so actually as we're kind of entering what some people dub the commercial space age, where government's role is then changing again to being more of an enabler and a regulator, allowing private companies to deliver the missions which are demanded.
Okay, well what that means for us with Mars Horizon is that now we've got contractors. We now have the option to use them with our building. So let's say there's some contractors that will actually get stuff built way quicker than you can, but it's going to cost quite a bit more. Or there's going to be stuff that they can make it for half as much as it would cost you, or something along those lines, but always going to blow up. So depending on like what kind of stage you are in the race, like how desperate you are to beat the other agencies to each mission, you can kind of decide to kind of go for the luxury contractor or for the the last minute panic contractor, that sort of thing. But it all has a nice little bit of thing. So all right, so I am going to do a little agency mission, and I'm going to take some far slides of the moon, is the name of this mission. We're taking some shots at the back of the moon. The Floyd didn't really do that much that was kind of intrinsically cosmic, did they? I suppose. I mean, like, did they? I'm trying to think. Nothing. It was pretty far out, but it wasn't really spacey. Never mind.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of the Floyd, I must say. But, yeah.
I've got a bit of time. Bit of time for Blink Floyd. Okay, so we're sending a probe to orbit the moon and photograph its far side, the hemisphere facing away from Earth. Excellent. And in the meantime, let me tell you what I'm building. I'm building an astronaut training center, because I'm going to need some astronauts if we're going to be taking some of these to the moon. What would you want in an astronaut training center apart from a lovely comfy bed and some decent vending machines? What else would they want?
I mean, there's quite a lot of you need quite a lot of facilities. I mean, the main thing, one of the key things is to make sure your astronauts are fit and healthy. So you'll have a medical staff and a medical unit there who'll be monitoring the astronauts' well-being and make sure they're in top physical condition. And often you'll have some way of simulating being in a microgravity environment. So one of the most, I guess, visually memorable ways of doing this is a huge swimming pool. So most astronaut training facilities have a huge swimming pool in which the astronauts can put on mock-up spacesuits and work on mock-ups of spacecraft underwater. So neutral buoyancy facility.
Have you had a go?
I haven't had a go. I've seen the one in Cologne that the European Space Agency used, but I haven't gone for a dip myself.
How big is it? Is it much bigger than a normal pool?
It's deeper. I guess surface area. Yeah, off the top of my mind, it wasn't hugely bigger in terms of the surface area than your standard swimming pool.
Just deeper.
But deeper, yes, they can get the mock-up spacecraft in there. It's not exactly the same as being in space, but it gives some impression, I think, of the challenges they'll face.
Yeah. Well, do they have to eat a special diet beforehand, like to get them in the right physical place? Do they eat the same food they're going to eat up there?
No. So the food they eat when they're up there is not quite as delicious as Earthbound food. So I think it'd be kind of cruel to make them suffer that. Well, apparently the food has got much better in recent years as we've learned more about the psychology of diet and how important it is actually to have a varied and interesting diet. So no, but they do have to eat a sensible diet and do a lot of exercise. But I guess nothing that you'd consider out of the ordinary for anyone who's trying to get fit or stay fit on Earth. And then once they're in space, they have to do quite a lot of exercise, a few hours a day, not necessarily because they expect to remain in peak fitness, but to try and counteract some of the muscle loss and bone loss that you experience in microgravity.
So even with the food and the exercise in space, they'll still lose the muscle, but it's just they'll lose less if they're exercising a lot. Yeah,
so some astronauts will lose, I'm not very good at remembering the exact percentages. I think it's up to 40% of muscle mass in a 6-month mission, which is quite a lot. And I think it's around 20 to 25% of bone density you could lose in the same time frame, which doesn't really matter when you're in space because you're not using all the muscles you normally use on Earth anyway. You don't need them to get around. But when they then return to Earth, that can pose some quite serious problems. So we're doing a lot of research at the moment into how to counteract that. And that's something we'll need to understand in greater detail as we're preparing for missions to Mars, because you'll be in space for a much longer period then.
So I've just, in the game, finished the human in space research. So we're about to start the initial steps of our space agency putting the human in space. Now this is something you're quite interested in, Andrew? Something you've had a little bit of experience with. Wow. So why do we even want to put humans in space?
That's a good question. Not just for fun, not just for the hilarious music videos they record. Although those are enjoyable, but they're still fun. Now, there's all kinds of research you can do in space which you can't do robotically. So any research which involves the human body. And then in terms of sending humans to other planetary bodies, whether to the moon or Mars or beyond, there's quite a compelling case for that, just in terms of how much more efficient humans are. So it's much more expensive to send them because you've got to keep this human being alive, got oxygen and food to eat and so forth. So the life support systems, quite a big increase in the weight of whatever you're launching.
Right.
But it has been shown that a good example is from the Apollo missions. One of the astronauts who went was a geologist, and the value of the samples he collected in his short duration on the moon was scientifically much more valuable than all the samples all the other Apollo astronauts collected between them, because he had that literal experience in the field from being a geologist. He could just see, and that kind of embodied expertise. Theoretically, we could get there with AI, but we're a long, long way away from that. And even just for more banal things, I suppose, like how to traverse a rocky field.
Right.
If a human being knows how to walk, how to assess how big an object is, whether to jump over it or walk around it. And again, we've got the AI developing for that for rovers, and we're increasing efficiency all the time with new rovers that are designed to be sent to Mars. But it's still much less efficient than the way a human being there in situ can navigate.
I've, by the way, guys, I've had a construction event, which means that all my optimal launch windows have become suboptimal. So that's not good.
What's caused that?
Oh, they messed something up when they were making it.
Can't get the help these days, can you?
Never mind. Well, we'll carry on regardless. But it's nearly time to hire some astronauts. I'm quite looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So. Should we avoid doing the animal in space mission? I think so. I think we can. I think we can avoid doing.
We'll work around it.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think of that poor dog.
Yeah, speak of my own dog, and then I'm like, nope, only humans go in space on my playthrough.
But then I read something about a load of geckos or something. But I think they were up to no good. Whatever. I think they were
space geckos.
Yes, but they were rude geckos.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about the worms earlier, so there are some circumstances in which it's worth having animals in space. If you can send the humans there straight away and then crack on.
Right, absolutely.
We get to write our own history of space. One of the joys of Mars Horizon.
If you had to take an animal into space, Gem, what would it be? If it like a wasp?
I was thinking, oh god, being trapped on a spaceship with a wasp, I would exit there. I would just be like, I'm going to fly back to Earth on my own in my spacesuit. I was thinking maybe a jellyfish or some sort of deep sea creature, because maybe they would be okay with the pressure, right?
And the microgravity. Maybe they just flap
around.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd be like, I feel right at home. Maybe like a deep sea fangly fish, with the lights. They're quite cool.
Has anyone put a jellyfish in the space?
Good question. There have been fish that have gone to the International Space Station. Some Japanese experiments have used fish.
How do you do that with the water? Are they like in a special tank?
Yeah, so they're yeah, exactly that.
Would you have like a blob of water floating around and the fish would just be in it?
You probably could. I think that would be a bit risky. So they were very close in a proper tank. Yeah.
It would look quite cool though.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can see images of it if you Google it. There's and it does look pretty cool.
Fish in space.
They've taken snakes into microgravity before, not into space, but I think on parabolic flights, which is one of the ways we simulate microgravity on Earth.
Go up and dive.
Yeah, so you get about 20 seconds microgravity at a time. And I seem to remember that some of the snakes tied themselves in knots. And some of them just went completely straight, completely flat and straight as soon as gravity was taken away.
Oh.
because they had no reference point for what was up and down. So suddenly they just went completely straight.
Like a snake rod.
Yeah.
And then use them as a weapon.
I guess I wouldn't want to risk using a snake as a weapon in space.
I mean, that's
official policy, but I wouldn't.
The Master Horizon expansions, space snake swords. I'm here for it.
Snakes on a space station. Okay, so we're building the payload now for our human in space mission. We haven't said exactly what our humans are doing. It's not important, but we can make it up. What should we pretend they're doing? Oh, I guess we're just trying to get a human into space and return them safely to Earth. I guess that's kind of like the first thing, is it, Andrew? Just see if we can do it.
So showing you can do that. I mean, that's why we all remember Yuri Gagarin. That was a really significant milestone. And yeah, technically quite a challenge beyond just having an inanimate object in space to actually have a human being survive and come back safely.
So
how long was he in space for the first space flight?
I'm sorry?
How long was Yuri up there for? Do you know? I'm going to look it up.
Oh, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. It was...
I think it was like just over an hour or something. I was reading about this the other day. It was one orbit, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, there you go. 1 hour and 48 minutes.
Yeah, so that wasn't a long mission, and it really was just showing that they could do that.
Yeah.
I think, like he said one thing on that mission, and I can't remember what it is, but it's brilliant. Something like, the mission is proceeding, I am well.
I am well. Back I come.
Love it. Well, we're not sending... So, we're sending the Mercury, which is a small...
And let's have one person in.
That's right. Yeah, one person crew capacity. It is 1,800 kilograms in mass. It's going to take 3 months to build, according to this. That's probably not realistic in real life, but it could be. Yeah, designed to carry a human into space and then return them safely to Earth. Sounds like what we're after.
We can hire an astronaut soon.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Let's hire some astronauts.
When I was playing through the beta, I sent 2 astronauts up. I named them after me and my boyfriend, and then we died as soon as we got into space. It was not a very successful flight.
That is depressing.
I mean, didn't have a very high percentage of launch, but I chanced it anyway, so...
Okay, I'm going to call one astronaut Jemima.
Yeah.
I'm going to call one astronaut Andrew.
My dreams come true.
Finally! And one astronaut Mike. It's nice, isn't it? Welcome to your new job. Here's your new name.
You was a job interview. I thought, okay, fine.
No, that's it.
Just be grateful you're not called Space Worm.
Yeah, turn up, put the yellow suit on, get in the Space Worm and wait. Okay, payload's complete. So let's have a look at the engineer report. According to our engineers, the required launch configuration will grant valuable data on the vehicle's second stage. So that's good. So we've got a little experience boost on this one, which is good considering our engineers messed up the last lot. Something's shocking. Right now, is Space Worm going to be large enough, powerful enough, to get this big new payload up? I don't think it is.
Come on, Space Worm, I believe in you.
I think we're gonna have to make a new vehicle. So I'm thinking we could use the Ariane 1 upper. Okay, so that has got a maximum distance of Earth orbit. That's all we need. It's got an upper stage thrust of 1,900 kilograms. Should cover it. Okay. And for the
astronauts have to. Speaking of weight, the astronauts have to weigh a certain amount to go into space. Is there like a limit? Like with jockeys, they try and get them to be lighter. Is it the same with astronauts?
Yeah. Do you do that?
Yeah, I don't think it's an officially prescribed upper maximum. And there have been some quite tall astronauts who've gone into space. So yeah, there's not a definitive cut-off point. But there have been suggestions that this is one of the arguments for more female astronauts is that typically women are smaller than men and just as capable once they're up there. So you can save a few quid on your launch costs.
Yeah, I guess it's like whether you have very muscular astronauts, if they're going to lose the muscle, but then they'll weigh more, or if you have slimmer astronauts. And they're cheaper to send up.
And they want to eat more as well. They'd be all, oh,
Yeah, that's true.
Get some more goujons on. I'm hungry. I know what they're
That'd be
like.
me.
These muscly people. Just keep eating goujons.
I'd be like, you need to bring all the chicken nuggets if I'm going to be up there for any length of time.
Have they ever sent chicken nuggets to space?
That's a good question that I
No,
wasn't
it's
expecting.
not. Come on, it's not. That's a rubbish one. But I am interested.
I guess the crumb and the batter around a chicken nugget could be risky, because if that breaks off and flakes, then that'll be loose in the space station.
Yeah, because they have wraps instead of bread, don't they?
Yeah,
And
they
then
batter sandwiches. Yeah, there was a NASA astronaut, I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head, but there's one who smuggled a bacon sandwich into one of his flights. And then for decades, sandwiches were banned.
Illegal sandwich in space, I like it.
Until Tim Peake's mission, the first British astronaut to go to the International Space Station a few years ago. And Heston Blumenthal designed him a bacon sandwich that would be crumbless.
No way.
Bacon sandwich. I'm looking this up.
I hope I'm not making false claims, but I think he was the first person to have a bacon sandwich in space since the American astronaut who got them vetoed all those years ago.
So I was watching a bit about the different.
It sounds like a porky. Okay,
It's, isn't it? Now I'm saying it out loud, it sounds ludicrous.
No, it's true. I found about it.
See?
That's amazing. Maybe we'll try and find the recipe, and then the Orocnauts can try and make some crumbless sandwiches.
Yeah.
And you then have to encase it in a tin for transport as well. So
Tin of sandwich. I have seen tin sandwiches in America. You get these jam and peanut butter sandwiches in tins. I think that's to do with laziness rather than space, though.
Okay, listen, guys. I'm gonna have to send one of us into space. Who's going for it?
Me, please.
Okay.
Let's write a new history of space where the first person in space is a woman.
No, I think Russia might have already beat us. I'll have a look in a minute. We'll see.
Oh, damn.
I'm not sure. Right, how do I find out? Okay. Human in space. Oh, dude, they've all beat us.
Oh, it's because we're too busy talking about space snakes. Behind our backs, they're out there firing people into space.
Okay, right. So we're about to launch the human in space.
Come on,
Now,
Jem.
it is June 1966, July 1966. Here we go. So a little later than it happened in real life, I think. Is it?
yeah, only a little later though.
Okay. Cool. Well, we've done all right then. All right.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
Not bad.
We've done our best. All right, Jem. Okay, so bad news on the launch. It's absolutely chucking it down, mate.
I'm from England. I'm used to the rain. It'll probably be fine.
Okay. All right.
Chance it.
All right. Let's give it a go. So you're...
That's quite
Go on.
89% reliability. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's pretty good, eh?
That's reasonable.
So you're in that little thing right at the top of that rocket.
All scrunched up.
Yeah. You've got your bacon sandwich.
Crumbless chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
That would just be chicken, wouldn't it? Just a lump of.
If you could go into space with crumbless, gluten-free, vegan chicken nuggets, I would high five you for it.
Oh God, is that even a nugget anymore? Is it going well?
Yeah, it did it. It didn't blow up.
Oh, sweet.
I guess you guys are behind me on the. Yeah, it went fine.
Yeah, we're watching on the. I'm watching on the Steam page. There's a slight delay.
Okay, so this is quite a complicated mission. It might involve me having a good old ponder and a think. So if I go quiet, don't worry
quite
too
right.
much.
We've had someone ask about the design choices we had to make to try and balance simulation with fun in the game, because there's a lot of paperwork in real space travel, isn't there?
Andrew, would you say that was fair?
Yeah, there's a lot of paperwork. I mean, I find it interesting.
Yeah.
The paperwork.
It's still space paperwork. That's still exciting.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of what my work is, there's people across government doing equivalent in other government departments, but the work I'm doing is about space, so it's kind of the admin, but it's space flavoured, so I love it. And I find a lot of the kind of diplomacy we do with other countries really, really fascinating, and a lot of that does involve a lot of paperwork inevitably, which, yeah, probably wouldn't make a great game. I find it makes a fun career, but probably wouldn't translate to a game brilliantly.
So I
To be
mean,
fair, there's a lot of paperwork in games development too.
Sure.
yeah. So I mean, I guess if you've got like humans in space, and they're doing microgravity experiments, that's when you kind of prick your ears up, because that's kind of like everything that you're interested in one. So on the like in the like the space station, the ISS, where there's loads of humans and there's microgravity experiments going on, and they're all from all different nations as well. How does that help us? Like having everyone collaborate together in that sort of situation.
Yeah, I guess there's quite a few advantages to that. I mean, the International Space Station, the reason we participate in it primarily is for the scientific return, for the data you get from that environment that you can't get from any laboratory on Earth. But really, a lot of the genesis of the International Space Station came from the aftermath of the Cold War, and wanting to have a collaborative endeavor which had the US and Russia and lots of other countries all working together towards a common goal. And that's really one of the big benefits of it, is that it has been, if it's not too lofty a phrase, it has been an instrument of peace between these countries. You saw recently, I'll say recently, a few years ago, when there was a lot of tension between Russia and the US. One of the few diplomatic channels that remained open between the two countries, and where they continued on kind of working together, was the International Space Station, because they're mutually dependent, and having that codependency for a common goal means that they've both got an incentive to work together.
Right.
So in a broader kind of geopolitical sense, I think collaboration in spaces can only be a positive. And just on a more, I guess, individual human level, the greater diversity of people from different backgrounds you have, the more interesting solutions you're going to have to any given problem.
Right.
And that's as true in space as it is in any other challenge you might face on Earth.
Yeah, it was nice seeing the astronauts recently arriving at this space station. Everyone's there to greet them, and there's like they have meals together and stuff. I always find it really interesting to learn about life on the space station, just the day-to-day challenges and like how you do that.
Yeah, they try to have at least one meal together as a crew every day,
that's really nice.
and that's the highlight for a lot of them. It's a natural way we socialize as human beings is often over food. You see that across all different cultures, and yeah, that's just as true in space. So they try to get together for that meal time and make it more of a social occasion each day. And that's important for their psychological well-being as well.
Is that like do they have like breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Because I guess, are they all on different schedules? How does that work?
Yeah, they're orbiting the Earth 18 times a day. So they have 18 sunrises and sunsets, which can be disorienting and really messes up your body clock in kinds of ways. But they do stick to a routine, a 24-hour clock, basically. That partly helps them with communicating with ground control, and yeah, helps to keep them a bit sane. So all the astronauts on the ISS at a time now have the same meal times, and yeah, 3 meals a day, and they stick to roughly the same schedules, even though they'll all be working on their own individual missions and experiments. Yeah, to roughly the same timetable.
So they all sleep at roughly the same time?
Yeah, exactly.
I would have thought they would do it on a cycle, so there's always someone awake. But
yeah, I mean, they're monitored from the ground as well.
Guys! I just averted a power cut.
what?
I had I built. Remember we built that backup power generator. And
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
this is important, guys. This is just averted a. Sorry, carry on.
Long-term decision making. It's good strategic planning. Well done.
I mean, where did we built that 15 years ago, and it's
Come in, saved us, saved me probably. I'm in space.
Oh. So, by the way, I'm just researching a multi-crew mission.
You guys can go up now.
Multi-crew orbit. So I'm hoping that I can get all 3 of us up.
Yeah.
With any luck. So we'll see.
Or maybe just two of us and my chicken nugget supply.
Yeah, you avenge our demise should it go wrong. We're going to take the Gemini on that mission.
Me or?
Oh no, yeah, that's the name of our payload. It's a cone-shaped multi-seat capsule designed to carry its crew into space to support various activities. Trust me, it's nice. It's a good ride. It's good. Right. Multi-crew orbit. Let's plan our mission. The Gemini. Okay, so yeah, crew capacity 2. Yeah, I want to send 3 of us. So what I'm going to do is there's a payload variant which will let us send up 3. So let's get that one.
Hooray! Yeah, let's do that. And I'll go up.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm going to need to focus my research. So maybe I'll look at maybe doing a Mars flyby to wrap stuff up with. Have a little swing by Mars. That'd be quite nice.
Yeah.
Okay, right, so we've got an optimization available in construction. That's going to increase our payload's reliability by 10% of what they've just found out, so that's good. Cool. So, Andrew, how did you get into doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I've been with the space agency for nearly 10 years now. I joined just as it was set up back in 2011. Before that, I'd worked for a research funding council. So, looking at how to support academic researchers, basically. So that was my reason. I'm not actually an engineer or a scientist myself. And the vast majority of people who work in the space community do come from science or engineering backgrounds. Right. But also we need people with a whole range of skills, lawyers, accountants, people like me, administrators, and yeah, a whole variety of people. International relations, diplomacy is a big part of it, and that's what my day job is now, really. So yeah, it's one of those sectors where science and engineering are really important and kind of foundational to the whole sector, but we really need skills of every background to have a successful space agency and space program.
I was watching the SpaceX stuff, and the thing that really kind of made me go like, oh, of course, was they had like a whole row of people on sewing machines, and it's like, of course, of course you do. Like,
I guess you'd hand make all this stuff, wouldn't you? Because you're not going to mass produce the spacesuits.
And that's really exciting, isn't it? Because it's like, oh wow, like literally anybody could be working at a space agency because they need all skills, not just rocket scientists.
Yes, the rocket scientists you hear a lot about, and for good reason. It's quite challenging, which is fairly well known. Yeah. But yeah, there really are a whole range of skills that you need. It's a huge team effort. You see the one astronaut in space, and that's the person who, quite rightly, gets all the plaudits and attention. But underneath that one astronaut, there'll be a team of thousands of people who will have been involved in any given mission.
Yeah, I liked watching it's always about food with me. So watching there was a nutritionist and she was talking about how they made sure they got everything they needed in space, but as small as they could, and like variety of food, like there was so much to consider just on what you would feed them up there. When it was the whole role, it was really cool. And then she said about like different countries had different things as like a set requirement in their meals. I think the Americans had like M&Ms was like a treat that they were allowed to take up. I can't remember what the Russian one was. They had a slightly different like treat. It was like for each country liked the most.
It's always interesting how different nationalities play up to their national stereotypes. There's something kind of reassuring about that sometimes. The Italian Space Agency sponsored some research into how to make espresso.
I was going to guess, was it coffee? Right.
Yeah. Which apparently is, on a fundamental level, how you control the flow of steam in microgravity is quite an interesting engineering and scientific challenge. It wasn't just about getting their espresso. There was some application to it as well.
Can you imagine how good that would taste, though?
Oh,
looking out the window of the ISS.
Earth, just having a little espresso and some M&Ms. That sounds like a great start to the day. And you could have 18 because you could have one every morning, 18 a day.
I don't think we'd recommend that.
You'd get a lot done. You wouldn't sleep.
Well, you've got it. Yeah, don't knock it till you've done the science on it first. You know, you have to eat 18 M&Ms in zero gravity before we can come to the conclusion whether that is a bad idea.
I mean, 6 months later, you come back with your whole body reduced, with your muscles wasted away, and totally wired. So, not the condition we want our astronauts returning in.
It takes quite a while to recover when you get back, doesn't it? Is it 6 months? 6 months per year or something?
I mean, it can depend, and it affects different people in different ways. But yeah, it can take a long time to adapt. Even some quite simple things like effectively the signal from your inner ear, which tells your brain which way you're oriented when you're on Earth, effectively gets shut off after a few days in space. So you're not getting that orientation from your inner ear. And then when you return to Earth, it takes a couple of weeks for your inner ear to get switched back on. So you can be feeling really dizzy and almost like you're on the deck of a boat. That kind of really disrupts your balance, and that could take weeks to come back. And then the muscle wasting and so on. It's quite an intensive rehabilitation they have to go through.
Oh man, that would be horrible.
Yeah, it's not all looking out the window sipping espresso.
I mean, that's what I think of astronauts, but yeah, that's quite grueling. I was reading that like now when astronauts come back and they do all the interviews as soon as they land and stuff, they're all sat down and stuff. But the early astronauts, they wanted them stood up to be like looking impressive and stuff. It must have been really hard. They must have felt awful, like stumbling around.
Right. So yeah, whenever you see those publicity photos of just after they've landed, they're always sitting down, and often they literally wouldn't be able to stand up immediately returning. Partly because of the disorientation, partly because they haven't used their legs properly for weeks or months.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't have walked, would you? Like the whole time.
Exactly. I mean, they try and simulate this with a treadmill and then a load of bungee cords, effectively, your shoulders and around your waist to keep you on the treadmill. But it's not quite the same as being on Earth, I don't think.
So, like, you know, in 2001, and they've got that the spaceship kind of like spins round, and that's how they make the gravity. Is that what you could actually do?
Yeah, in theory. And this is another thing we're going to have to solve before we start sending humans to Mars, is some kind of artificial gravity or something that counteracts the lack of gravity. And that's one of the obvious ways, is to simulate that force just through centrifugal motion of spinning whatever craft you're in.
So we really, so ultimately, like before we nail getting us to Mars and all that, we've got to have that kind of gravity thing going on in the spacecraft. Yeah,
or some kind of alternative way to counteract all the detrimental effects of not having gravity. So some would argue that with a proper exercise regime and exercise devices combined with nutrition, you can counteract a lot of the effects. Whether you can get that to be effective enough for, I mean, going to Mars would be 9 months there, 9 months back.
What's the gravity like on Mars?
It is, I think it's a third of what it is on Earth. So 3/8, around that. So significantly reduced, yeah. So not quite like on Mars, on the Moon, sorry. So not quite as extreme. I think the Moon is about 1/10 of the Earth's gravity.
Okay, so you wouldn't jump quite as high running around, but it would cause the same issues that microgravity caused, or not?
Yes, but to a lesser extent. So, I mean, that's an interesting question. I read a paper once about how humans would change over generations if we evolved and adapted to the Martian environment. And there's a suggestion, I think, that we'd get much taller is one of the effects, as well as all the effects of radiation and so on the body. You've got much less protection from solar radiation when you're on Mars.
And if there were bugs up there, would they get giant? Because isn't it gravity is one of the things that stops them getting bigger?
Yeah, potentially. But then again, they'll be affected by radiation as well. This is one of the reasons we think if we do find signs of microbial life on Mars, quite likely to be below the surface, because there you're protected from the radiation. But then I suppose being below the surface would then mitigate against being huge creatures. But
who knows? Might scratch the surface. Giant space worms.
Yeah. I don't want to be quoted as a representative of the UK Space Agency. Giant space worms on Mars.
Yeah, that was us. That was us making that up. The space worm thing. Nothing to do with Andrew.
I saw the trap you're trying to lead me into there.
Okay. By the way, guys, while we've been chatting about this, I've been doing our multi-crew human in space mission, and I got good news.
All three of us up there.
Yeah, all three of us are up there, and it's good news.
Yes.
Like so far, we're doing well. The problem is we've just run into, so we're at a phase now where we're getting a lot of heat because we're re-entering. So things are getting hot. So I've been balancing the heat, trying to like lose a bit here and there. I mean, I guess the whole heat thing. How hot is it in, like, do they have like these capsules full of people like regulated to like a nice air conditioned 23 degrees, or do they get put in and say, guys, you're gonna get cold, you're gonna get hot?
No, yeah, very much the former. They have to try and maintain a fairly constant temperature, because when you're in direct sunlight and outside of the Earth's atmosphere, you would get incredibly hot. And when you were in Earth's shadow on the other side of the orbit, you would get incredibly cold. So yeah, that's one of the things they have to regulate when they're up there.
Okay. Well, I think I've managed to keep our heat limits just within the acceptable level. So
it's a little bit toasty, but we're managing.
We are currently in the middle of splashing down in the middle of an ocean.
Oh, yay!
Unscorched, untorched, and otherwise unbroiled. We made it.
Just in time to do our exit interviews. Say hello to everyone.
Yeah, we'll sit down on the launch pad, and yeah.
Oh, look, it's just coming up. I can see us crashing in now. Good work, us.
Hey. We did all right there. Okay. Right. No, we've done all right so far then, guys, for a fledgling agency starting out. We do have the expert help of Andrew from the UK Space.
Well, there we go. There we go.
That's probably why this is all going so well. So let's see if we've got any buildings to do. We're nearly wrapping stuff up here. All I wanted to do on this stream was to have Andrew's help on the human in space stuff. So all of this is now bonus now. So this is a relaxed fit section of the stream now. So what should we do? Let's stick in a new building. Let's stick in that spacecraft assembly building we were talking about. Remember we were talking about the clean environment for deploying, for making payloads. Now, I actually got to visit one of these. I went to, it was a place in Oxford. Andrew, you...
Harwell, maybe?
RAL.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went down there.
Very good.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, they had these big clean rooms. They're really clean and really big.
Yeah. It's great. It's and this is one of the things people are often surprised by, the UK having a space industry at all. Some people are sometimes surprised by this, but we're one of the world leaders in building small satellites in particular, but also in lots of other areas of space technology. It's kind of surprising. You're driving through the bucolic Oxfordshire countryside, and then suddenly there's this very futuristic, very bright, clean laboratory. But they do some really amazing, groundbreaking work. Just nestled into the rolling hills of Oxfordshire.
It is weird. I had absolutely no idea until I started working on this game quite how much stuff is happening here. It's very, very nice. So, just as we kind of like start bringing this to a slow wrap-up close, I think I'm going to go and build a Mariner 1 probe. And I think I'm going to send that one to Mars to do a little flyby. Something to do. So Mars Horizon is ultimately about managing a space agency, the whole space race thing, but it's called Mars Horizon because we're trying to get to Mars. We're trying to make human beings a multi-planetary species. So we want to be putting down like habitation units, crewed rovers, things like that. Andrew, why is it that everybody wants to go to Mars anyway? Because it sounds you're making it sound like it's really hot. Jem says there's bugs, man.
My very expert opinion.
It sounds like there's going to be loads of like radiation from the sun. You were saying. Sounds like the soil like would taste a bit chlorine-y or something. Yeah, why do we even want to go? I've gone off the idea. What are we doing?
I mean, the reason why I spend my days in, pre-lockdown, in offices in Swindon and London, predominantly. It's definitely a challenging environment. I think for some people, there's always going to be a psychological draw to do the most challenging and the most extreme activity they can, right?
Yeah.
Actually, quite an important part of the astronaut selection process is making sure you don't have thrill seekers. After all, they're going to be in charge of a multi-billion-pound spacecraft.
Right.
So we have to be quite careful. And there's a lot of psychological assessment that's done of potential astronauts, that they're going to take the mission seriously and that they are not doing it just for their own ego or their own thrill, that they do understand the big collective effort they're participating in.
That's the last thing you want to hear coming over.
Yeah,
is Leroy Jenkins before. Okay. Right. So I mean, so they kind of avoid thrill seekers and people that are likely to go, all right, go on, let's just do it. That makes a lot of sense.
And I guess they'd have to like make sure they get on well with other people if they're going to be on the space station, because it's not very big and there's a lot of people up there, right?
That's another reason I would be a terrible astronaut, because after a couple of days, I would just be winding people up for fun. Just stick with you, stuck in this thing for months at a time. I personally would struggle with that.
Right.
As I'm sure my family, who I've been stuck at home with for the past few months, can attest.
My poor wife.
No, the teamwork.
Yeah.
That teamwork element is really important. Some of the training they do on Earth is they go caving. So they go in small groups and they go caving in Sardinia, and spend days together underground, where teamwork is crucial, and being able to work in a collaborative environment in a collaborative way in an unknown environment is really important. So that's some of the training they do here on Earth to really test those skills.
Have you ever been caving?
Part of the reason I have been
Yeah.
caving. It's another reason I'm a terrible astronaut. I'm not a natural person. I used to find it fun, but it would freak me out a little bit, which I guess is why I found it fun. But yeah, that teamwork thing's super important, and a big part of the selection process as well.
Do they have any rules on the ISS, like no one's allowed to drum on their thighs with their hands? No whistling.
I guess that would come down to whoever the commander is at the time. There's always one of the crew is designated the commander of the ISS. So they're the ultimate authority on how those kinds of things will be handled.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a set of like prohibited activities or things.
Yeah, I've had to make a rule that my boyfriend stops drumming on the desk. He does it while he's thinking, and I work next to him now. And I'm like, that needs to stop until lockdown is over, because I'm going insane.
What I tend to go in heavy on is in our space station here, guys. I'm gonna have to make a rule: no whistling.
Whistling is a bad one.
I'm not, okay. I don't mind whistling per se if it's outdoors. I don't think whistling should be done in the confines of anywhere indoors, let alone in a payload orbiting in low Earth orbit. It's just irresponsible. But that's interesting to know that they make sure that one of the things they do to make sure it all goes smoothly is just don't put maniacs up there. That's sensible.
Does the commander change regularly? Like they're taking turns, or is it like a new person comes up and it changes? How does that work?
Yeah, so they divide the time on the space station because it's up there permanently and it's permanently crewed and has been for decades. So it will switch over between crew members, but for each segment, they're divided into segments. So for each segment, there will be a nominated commander. It would normally be one of the more experienced astronauts.
It's no responsibility.
Okay, so the mission I'm on at the moment, listen, I'm not going to lie, chaps, I'm not doing well. It's not going well. So I think this is the first phase of this Mars. It was orbit or impact. I can't remember. Either way, we're sending was it Pioneer? I think we were sending.
Yeah.
So the problem with this is that we're going to have to leave Earth's orbit, and that takes quite a lot of thrust. So the puzzle I'm doing at the moment is basically get a load of thrust. And I've got to do it in my last turn. So I think I'm going to be alright, I think. Let's see. I guess it would take quite a bit of thrust to get past Earth's initial gravitational pull. Okay. Right, here we go. Oh, this is going to make no sense at all, Andrew, but believe me, this is quite tense right now. This is a very tense moment. Basically, I've messed up so badly that there's absolutely no way that I could get the required amount of thrust to get our little Pioneer out of low Earth orbit. So I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is it just going to float around up there now?
I mean, yeah, pretty much. I guess there's quite a lot of failed stuff floating around there in real life as well, not just ones that I've done. Is that is that a problem for like ESA and the UK Space Agency? Load of failed missions that people like me have just messed up.
Well, luckily we don't have too many people like you controlling missions in real life.
That's what we want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the space debris is an issue. I mean, for a failed mission like this, you'd expect it would probably deorbit fairly rapidly and then burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. If it was a bigger probe, then bits of it might land, most likely in the ocean. One of the things we require UK companies to do, who want to control a satellite in orbit, they have to demonstrate that they have a plan to deorbit it when it's at the end of its useful life. It has that capability designed in from the outset. Because debris is increasing, and every time two space objects collide with each other in orbit, they'll fragment and create even more debris.
Right.
And so you can see there could be a snowball effect. One collision event can then lead to many more. So it is something which we're taking seriously, and something we have to discuss with international partners, because
it affects everyone, and everybody's contributed to it, basically. Yeah. Oh.
Exactly. So something we're looking for new kind of global standards on at the moment. How we observe the very many pieces of debris, how we prevent there being more pieces of debris, and then how we can kind of manage collision avoidance and share data on all the bits of stuff that are up there.
Right.
Does the space station get hit by stuff ever? How do they, if there's a big bit coming towards it, do they move it out of the way, or?
Yeah, so they, I mean, we do track most pieces of space debris, though we can only track to a certain size. So anything smaller, it's not my area of expertise. I think it's anything smaller than a centimetre, quite hard to track from Earth.
Oh, yeah, that's tiny.
Yeah, right. But yeah, the space station does get hit by small particles, and the speeds they're travelling at means it can be quite dangerous. So there's quite a lot of damage to the large solar arrays, those kind of iconic big bits spanning out from the space station. There's quite a lot of damage over the years done to them. I mean, the real risk to the astronauts themselves is when they're outside the space station doing a spacewalk. Because if a tiny fragment hits that suit, it could, in theory, go right through it, and that would be bad. So yeah, in order to avoid debris, the space station can be, we can increase its orbit or decrease its orbit as needed. And with a bit of clever maths, you can see when the collision is likely to occur and then raise the orbit as necessary.
Someone's asked, since we're talking about international partners, do other agencies have to agree or give permission to agencies in order to launch satellites?
Not necessarily. I mean, I could bore you for hours on international space law.
Go ahead.
If we were launching US technology, then the US government would have to license that. And vice versa. If a UK company wants to send a satellite to another country to be launched, then the UK government has to license that. But there's no need for permission for the UK company who wants to launch a UK satellite into orbit from a UK spaceport, as we hope will be the case in the coming years.
Yeah.
Then no, we need to seek permission. There's a principle enshrined in international law that all countries should have equal. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but all countries have the right to access space.
What about making sure that, like, might be a risk if you put yours up, it might hit someone else's? Do you have to let them know, like, a schedule in case someone's like, that's not a good day for us, we might be in the area or something?
Yes, there's obligations to well, firstly, to enter an orbit which you have a good sense will be safe and to avoid collisions. And then, yeah, there's collision alerts which get issued whenever it looks like there's going to be close proximity of orbits. And then, hopefully, at least one of those objects is capable of maneuvering, and then they can get out of the way. But yeah, there's processes for sharing that information between the operators and then resolving the issue.
Okay, I'm doing a little bit better this time. I'm not guaranteeing I'm gonna succeed at all. So we talked a little bit earlier about some excellent space music. You got any other kind of like cultural space stuff? What's your favourite space-based movie, Andrew? You got any like a favourite one?
Yeah, I'm not. Do you know what? I'm not a big movie watcher.
You're not a movie guy.
I'm not really. No, I don't watch a great number of films. And I'm not hugely into science fiction. I mean, I did enjoy The Martian. I thought that was good. And there was a few inaccuracies in it. I was watching it actually with a fairly senior scientist from NASA. We went to watch it together.
All right.
And afterwards, we just looked at each other and were like,
Tusk, Matt Damon, come on, come now.
Yes, because obviously it's a Hollywood production and it's fun, and a lot of it is based on real science. And obviously there's a few errors, but they have to take a bit of license with reality.
Sure.
So yeah, but it's one of those things. Space, I think it's fascinated people, not just since the space age, but for centuries. So it's kind of permeated every bit of culture. I mean, you start looking for it, you see space references everywhere.
It's very, and like these things are very comfortable. Jem, do you ever forget you're wearing it? Because
yeah, the spacesuit. Yeah. It's really good.
I had some people look around the house yesterday, and I forgot I had this on. But that was very.
It is really comfortable. It's very breathable, surprisingly. Yeah, I answered the door in it, and I forgot. And I was like, just take my parcel.
So the that
be like, oh, I'm not really an astronaut though.
That Mars mission we just did, by the way. The first part of that is done. So we've got it out of orbit. So now we're waiting for it to get to Mars. I think that takes a bit of a while. So yeah, it looks like we're about 8 months away from the next phase of that mission. So okay, good stuff. So yeah, that'll just be a flyby. So planetary flybys, that's what, just taking a couple of shots, maybe some scientific readings of like, yeah. I guess that would be. So, would we kind of like we do a flyby first and then check it out, and then we'd kind of look at maybe doing an orbiter or a lander? Is that kind of how it goes generally?
Yeah, so a flyby is easier than putting something into orbit. Just because of the geometry of it and the maths, basically. Getting something into orbit, you have to be quite precise with how and when you enter orbit. There's there's the Martian atmosphere is much thinner, so you can't use that to slow you down at all. Right. You have to get it, yeah. You have to be very precise to get something successfully into orbit, and this is why we've seen quite a few failed Mars missions over the years, because it's really tricky. Right. So yeah, next you'd want something in orbit, and then working on a lander as well. Again, with a very thin atmosphere, it's really hard to slow things down as they're heading towards Mars. You basically need an enormous parachute.
Right. Okay.
Again, we're coming back to the seamstresses. So the people who make the spacesuits, also to make an enormous parachute, which is going to survive and it's going to deploy successfully. Right. That's actually quite a technical challenge for how you then design that and stitch that material together and make sure it deploys properly at the right time. So yeah, it's quite a challenge getting to Mars.
Right.
And it takes a while as well. So you have to wait for 9 months.
Yeah.
To find out whether you've actually been successful.
And then when you get there, you've either got to live in a little pod or down an empty lava tube. I was reading something about some people thinking about that. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, so that's one of the. I mean, this is all conceptual stuff at this stage. But then you've got natural shielding from radiation.
Right.
On those lava tubes where lava has flowed in the past. It's kind of a ready-made cave, I guess, for you to live in.
No worms, Jim. Don't start with the worms again.
I was thinking lava-like bug, and I was like, lava tubes, giant bugs on Mars who can live in their old homes. That's my plan.
The important thing
I think I'd be too scared to go to space, because they're talking about like commercial space and people going on like space holidays around the Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be quite frightening. How far in the future is that, do you think?
So Virgin Galactic are saying they will be doing the first flights. I think it's later this year. They're saying.
Wow.
That won't be going into orbit. That'll be on a suborbital space plane. So that will go up into space and have I think it's 6 or 7 minutes of microgravity.
Okay.
That's different to the ones that go up and down, right?
Yeah, so the Virgin Galactic one is basically has a carrier aircraft, which is like a conventional aeroplane, and the spacecraft is carried underneath it. They get to a certain altitude, and then the spacecraft is dropped off the bottom of the plane and then accelerates almost vertically up. And yeah, you get 6 or 7 minutes, and then it'll land like an aeroplane on a runway.
Oh.
So a bit like a mini shuttle, but launched off a plane rather than a rocket. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Nuts. Okay. Right. So we're going to have to... I think the last thing I'm going to do now on this thing is I'm just going to commit to a Mars orbit mission. Basically, what's happened in the game, Andrew, is we've had a popular magazine has had the audacity to declare Mars is dead after seeing our photographs from our recent flyby mission. Basically, we've dashed any far-fetched hope that the planet might have had canals, and we've proved that it would appear to be a barren world. But I think, do you think that we should, as scientists, commit our agency to this Mars orbit mission to prove that there is much yet to discover, or should we just do nothing?
It'd make my life easier if let's just do nothing.
Yeah.
Would you commit to it? It's one of the enduring kind of questions we've never been able to answer is there life beyond Earth? And the closest, best place to look is Mars, so definitely more missions.
Let's commit to a Mars orbit mission. Yeah, I agree. You've got my full backing on this one. ESA commits to Mars missions. Brilliant. And we've also just built a Hall of Fame to commemorate. Actually, we haven't lost anyone yet, so it's a little bit morbid that we've just built a Hall of Fame in the
just in case.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have to have lost them? You can still pay tribute.
Oh, yeah. Let us. Maybe it's not just for if we've lost them. Maybe it's just for general astronauts.
Like retired ones as well. When I was playing, on the beta, I hired an astronaut, and then he got injured during training and couldn't go up to space at all. So he was like retired happily. He'd just done the training.
You can put a little plaque up in Mars Horizon if you have a training accident and commemorate them with a plaque, or you can. There's lots you can do. It's nice. So I'm trying to think. So we've got one more active mission, and this is just a normal solar wind monitoring mission. So we're sending up another ESRO-2B to do some solar wind monitoring. What even is solar wind?
Disclaimer: I'm not a solar physicist.
Oh, okay.
It's basically the particles from the sun. So it's not actually wind.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the particles from the sun which can affect our atmosphere. They can cause electromagnetic storms. So they can have an effect on satellites in orbit. And the rate of solar activity is always fluctuating. So it's something we observe quite closely, because any surge in activity can then have impacts on Earth.
I mean, I guess is that something you hear about occasionally is the idea of a solar flare causing some trouble. I guess that's.
I think it's on about roughly a 10-year cycle of activity between kind of peaks and troughs of activity. Okay. And yeah, you occasionally get a solar flare or coronal mass ejection.
That doesn't sound as flashy.
Yeah, classic science jargon. Which then will that's a massively increased period of activity.
Right, so Gemma, while we're on the wind down, let's chuck a big question out. If anybody has any last questions for Andrew, now's the time.
Let us know in the Discord or on the chat on Steam, and I will ask the questions for you. I'm monitoring those chats. People have just found a nice picture of the worm badge we're admiring.
Very good.
It is good.
Does it look like
a sort of, yeah, but Earthworm Jim actually had limbs, didn't he? So, a limbless Earthworm Jim. I really want to make a Mars Horizon mission patch. I think if we get some more of these suits, we could put the patches on. Be some really cool merch, or at least just for myself. I want a Mars Horizon spacesuit.
No, I wouldn't say no.
Could do it as a competition prize.
I had a question, actually, Andrew.
Go on.
I was talking to my wife, Jem, really late last night. Why, or is there any planets that aren't round? Like, is there any square planets?
I don't know. That's a good question.
It's all right if you don't know. Like, I realise that you're microgravity and human and space expert, not irregular planet.
Square planet. I mean, just by the nature of the way they're formed, they're going to tend towards a spherical shape, right? Because they start, the leading theory of how planets are formed is when a star is formed, you have these spinning rings, basically of dust and ice, and they slowly agglomerate. So you think all these particles slowly sticking together. It'd be bloody weird if it came out in a cube shape.
I suppose it would, yeah. I suppose it would.
You see what I mean? Sticking random around a surface, it's going to tend towards a spherical shape.
Okay, so as yet, it's probably not. I'll tell her when she's back from walking the dog.
Yeah, sorry.
But the Earth's not completely spherical, right? Isn't it slightly squished because of how fast it spins?
Yeah, exactly. So the Earth's slightly wider around the equator.
Right.
Maybe like an M&M shape.
Or like an egg.
Or like an egg. We have had someone ask what we would do if a gamma ray was firing towards Earth.
What would we do?
What is a gamma ray? I don't actually know what a gamma ray is.
No, I'm not a physicist either. I mean, gamma rays are always
Doesn't sound good for you, does it?
Doesn't.
good.
No. So I guess how long have we got, man? 8 minutes? How long till it gets here? What's it gonna do?
The sun is 7.5 minutes away, is it?
Can we
Am I
get in
making
one
that
of those lava tunnels Andrew was on about?
up?
Tell him we'll get in a lava tunnel. It'll be
That's
fine.
our answer.
Yeah,
We would get in a lava tunnel
yeah.
with the giant space bugs.
Yeah, probably should add no physics questions, please.
Not these ones, anyway.
No. Let's keep it biochemical or music. That'd be good. Yeah, one of the two.
Would you want to go up to the space station, Andrew, given the chance? Because I'm a bit scared of space. I don't actually think I'd go up there.
I think if there was an option to go up for like a day or two, I would. But yeah, I think any longer than that, and I'm really not the person to send to space in so many ways, personally.
Would you be pressing stuff and fiddling and chatting to the driver and all sorts?
Exactly that. Yeah.
I'd be getting some sick selfies in front of the cool window. They'd be like, Jen, we need to use that to look at things. And I'm like, no, 2 seconds.
I think I could manage a couple hours in there. But from what I know about a lot of people in a small area for a long period of time, I wouldn't want to be in there for more than a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, lockdown's given me a taste of like being stuck in one room for like most of the time, and it's not great.
Right.
And I have fast internet here.
Right.
They've got slow internet up there.
Can they watch telly up there? If all the satellites are pointing down to Earth, can they watch telly?
They can now, yeah. They didn't used to be able to, but yeah, they've basically got broadband up there now.
Oh, nice.
So, yes.
So
yes. I don't know.
they could be watching this then.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
I imagine they are. Yeah. Hi guys. Cheers for tuning in. You're doing a good job.
Thanks for your questions about gamma rays.
yeah. Okay. Cool. I've got a quick question. George Clinton or Bootsy?
George, definitely.
Okay. I'm a Bootsy man. I like Bootsy Collins. Jem, anything else from the in the hotline? Let's have a little look here.
Someone knows. One of our watchers says they'd like to visit Neptune. It's quite far away, that one. It's quite cold.
Yeah.
I think it's too cold for me.
Super duper cold, man.
Yeah, it'd take a while to get there. I mean,
that's a long way.
Yeah.
I get twitchy on a plane flight of more than an hour or two. You're looking at years to Neptune.
Maybe.
How long does it take to get to the space station? From
typically takes about 6 hours.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah, it's all right. But then, yeah, sometimes it goes slightly wrong, and it can take 2 days.
Oh, you wouldn't want it to go wrong, would you?
Well, like if you missed it and then.
Yeah, exactly. So if it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they have enough supplies on the rocket up there to be on there for a few days in case they miss it.
So they're prepared for 2 days basically. But yeah, it normally takes about 6 hours.
Oh man, yeah, that's not a big space to be stuck for 2 days.
No, you're stuck in your seat basically.
Oh my god, it's so boring.
Yeah, there's not a lot to do.
You look out the window.
You can look out the window, but your craft is slowly turning the whole time. So apparently, you get a bit to do that.
Oh man, yeah.
I'm glad we can
stick
experience
to the game.
Stuff in the game. Yeah. I'm glad we. Yeah.
Another selling point for the wonderful game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the fun without discomfort.
Without the risk of being stuck in your seat for 2 days.
Okay. Guys, I reckon we should wrap this up. This went okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. We sorted out the streaming problems. Thanks everyone who stuck with us the whole time. Very sorry that initially there was some lag and issues, but we think we fixed that now. So the stream on Friday, that should be smooth the whole time.
Anyway, the last part of this stream was better anyway. So you didn't miss anything. Like all the stuff you saw was really good. So don't worry about it. Yeah, Friday. So Friday, same time, 3 p.m. We're talking to Emmett Fletcher from the ESA.
He's met Buzz Aldrin, which is really cool. I'm going to ask him about him.
Yeah, so that'd be nice.
And we're revealing the final 2 space agencies
Yeah, so that'd be good. Yeah, so we know at the moment we've definitely got ESA, we've definitely got Russia, and we've definitely got America. So yeah, on Friday we'll find out what the last two are.
And we're streaming the full version of the game where we're up to at the moment. And yeah, so you can see all the bells and whistles. It looks amazing. There's been changes from this version, hasn't there, Mike?
Yeah. So quite a lot of changes from the version that you're seeing now has been made. So this is basically the beta version, as you can see by this thing. So the version we're playing on Friday is going to have enhancements as well as the two new agencies. It will not be final. There are lots of enhancements more to add, a lot more changes to be done for the better, and of course any feedback we get from this Steam Games Fest we will be taking on board as well. So please do keep hitting us up with your feedback.
Yeah, it's really useful.
Opinions. And also, don't bum us out. Tell us some stuff you liked as well, You got give and take. It's got to be give and take. So tell us something that was great, and then tell us a bug.
Yeah, sandwich it for us.
Awesome. All right. What have you got on the rest of the day, Andrew? Anything interesting?
I've got to make a couple of calls about a new space treaty, which we just today, so that should be cool.
Okay.
And nothing as fun as this, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I would say paving the road for future space treaties is pretty rock and roll in my book.
Yeah, I've just got to do some spreadsheets. There's no space trees for me.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, this was great. And thank you for everybody tuning in. We had a good old time, didn't we? Right.
Yeah, it was great.
Wish this Master Horizon, all that stuff. Like and subscribe, yada yada. Bye.